She locked the cafe for the night. Then someone covered her eyes, and the Mafia boss growled, "Don't scream." The city was a gray, indifferent creature, breathing heavily outside the steamed windows of Corner's diner. Susan Corner, fueled by caffeine and pure will, scrubbed the counter one final time. Her hands, rough from years of cheap dish soap, held the promise of escape. She was tired, a deep, fighting kind of weariness, but every dollar saved meant one less day in this neighborhood. Her goal was a life free from the shadows, a clean break. She checked the register, slipped her meager earnings into a separate, hidden pocket, and reached for the final deadbolt. Click. The sound of safety. That was the moment the silence shattered. Before her hand could turn the last lock, she felt the icy pressure. Two large, leather-gloved hands slammed over her eyes, pushing her back against the solid, immovable wall of a man. The scent of expensive dark wool, cold metal, and a hint of fresh blood confirmed the threat was absolute. His breath was a sharp warning against her ear. "Don't scream." Susan's terror was instantly replaced by a chilling, involuntary recognition of the raw, dangerous power holding her captive. She knew this was the kind of danger the city whispered about. This was not a robbery. This was the dark demanding her soul. Before we continue with our story, hit that like button, subscribe to The Shadow, and tell me in the comments, if you were Susan, when Simeon Peters growled, "Don't scream," would you run, or would you stay and let the ghost claim you as mine? Find out what happens next in this dangerous obsession. Watch now. The sudden, heavy body weight pressing her back against the cool metal of the door was the only thing holding Susan upright. Simeon's hands, firm, demanding, remained clamped over her eyes, but he finally moved, dragging her backward across the tile floor. He moved with a brutal, economic grace, pulling her past the counter and through the swinging kitchen door, shoving her into the cramped, cold space of the diner's storage room. The darkness was immediate and absolute, broken only by the thin slice of light from the hall. That faint light, however, was enough to reveal the issue. The pristine white cuff of his shirt was stained with a spreading, dark red bloom at the shoulder. Simeon, the terrifying ghost, wasn't there to hurt her. He was running. "The light," he rasped, his voice tight with pain, gesturing to the hall. "Kill it." His eyes, cold and demanding, locked onto hers. Susan's fear melted into a hard, defensive core of defiance. She was shaking, but she met his stare. "I need my money or I scream," she managed, the words shaky but clear. Simeon's expression didn't change, but a muscle ticked in his jaw. He seemed intrigued by her lack of hysteria. "I need a place to hide for 48 hours, he stated, cutting through her threat. "And you, waitress," he stepped closer, his shadow engulfing her, "are going to provide it." He tore the suit jacket off, revealing the ugly, deep wound in his shoulder. A bullet had grazed him, proving he was a man on the run, not a random criminal. The thin beam of light Susan aimed at Simeon's shoulder was harsh and unforgiving, revealing the extent of the damage. Using a forgotten, clean diner towel and a bottle of cheap antiseptic, she worked methodically. The forced closeness was agonizing. The air in the tiny room grew thick with the metallic scent of blood and Simeon's overpowering presence. He held his breath, enduring her painful pressure without a sound, his attention fixed solely on her. As she finished bandaging the wound, she used the darkness beneath a shelf to quickly type a coded name she'd heard whispered in the city's underbelly into her phone. Peters Simeon. The search results confirmed her fear in chilling, stark detail. Owner of half the city, Shadow King, untouchable. The ghost. When she looked up, Simeon was already watching her, a predatory knowledge in his eyes. She dropped the towel. "You're Simeon Peters," she stated, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. "The ghost." He didn't flinch. A ghost of a smile touched his lips, cold and confirming. "Now you know. And knowing that means you stay." He leaned forward, his presence a sudden physical weight. "You're safe here, Susan Corner. Safe from every enemy in this city. Every rival. Every petty criminal. They won't touch you while you're mine." He paused, his gaze burning, intensifying the internal conflict that raged within her. But you are not safe from me. You are my protection, and I am yours. Understand the difference. Simeon shifted his weight, wincing as the movement pulled at his bandaged shoulder, but his focus never left Susan's face. He began to speak, his voice a low, gravelly current, describing the rats, the trusted lieutenants who had turned on him, fracturing his carefully constructed organization. He wasn't seeking sympathy. He was laying out the harsh reality of his world, where loyalty was a transaction paid in blood. Susan listened, pushing past the terror to tap into the cold, financial fear that always fueled her. I helped you, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. I risked my safety for a criminal. My price isn't the diner's worth. It's my freedom. She locked eyes with him. I need $100,000 wire transferred before you walk out that door. Enough for a new name, a new city, and a permanent escape. The demand was outrageous, defiant. A flicker of something akin to admiration, or perhaps sheer surprise, crossed Simeon's features. A slow, chilling smile spread across his lips, acknowledging the calculation beneath her fear. You have guts, Susan Corner, he murmured, pulling out a burner phone with his good hand. I'm buying your spirit, not just your silence. He agreed to the price. Just as the cold, electronic hum of the burner phone filled the room, a car, dark and expensive, drove agonizingly slowly past the diner's front window. The taillights paused, casting two menacing red eyes on the dark entryway before slowly moving on. The search for Simeon was not just close, it was circling the sanctuary. The silence stretched, heavy and dangerous. The money transfer was still pending, a precarious electronic thread holding their bargain together. Susan had tried to feign sleep, curled up on a stack of empty flour sacks, but the knowledge that a mafia boss was 6 feet away made rest impossible. After hours of tense quiet, she eventually drifted off, only to be snapped awake by a touch. Simeon was leaning over her, his dark eyes like twin magnets in the dimness. Sleep is for the dead, or the protected, he murmured, his voice closer than it should have been. You are sleeping because you felt safe. That is dangerous. You are my weakness now, Susan. Everyone knows a ghost can be hunted through his attachments. He shifted, his hand moving to cup the back of her head, his thumb resting near her jaw, not a comfort, but a silent declaration of ownership. The contact was a sudden, consuming jolt. He lowered his head, his lips meeting hers in a demanding, forceful contact. The kiss was a territorial, possessive mark, tasting of grit and the coppery tang of old blood. When he finally drew back, his eyes were blazing. You are mine until the moment I walk out of this door, he stated, his voice a low promise. He finished, the words driving a spike into her chest. After that, you are mine forever. The tension was a taut wire stretching between them. The 48 hours Simeon had demanded were drawing to a close. He rose, checking the lock on the storeroom door. Time is up, he murmured, his eyes sweeping over her one last time. You hold up your end, and I hold up mine. Before he could take a step toward the exit, a scraping noise came from the front door. Simeon froze, moving with impossible speed to press himself against the wall, listening. The only sound now was the soft thud of something being dropped. Simeon retrieved it, a small, dark package slipped beneath the front door. He brought it back, dropping it onto the counter. It was addressed to Susan. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside lay a single, perfect black rose. Beneath it a note, small and crisp. Enjoy the company of a dying man. Valenti. Simeon's entire body went rigid. The cold, calculated control he had maintained for 2 days shattered. He simply ripped the note and the box into fragments, his face a mask of brutal, possessive fury. Valenti knew her name. Valenti knew she was the key. He grabbed Susan's jaw, his gaze blazing with absolute darkness. The money is meaningless now, he ground out. He used you as bait. And no one touches my bait. The bargain was broken, replaced by a simple, terrifying decree. He wasn't leaving. Simeon's body was a coiled wire, his every movement economical and lethal as he began to fortify their sanctuary. He dragged heavy sacks of dry goods from the storeroom, stacking them against the windows and the back door, creating crude but effective barricades. He reached into an inner pocket of his discarded suit jacket and pulled out a small, heavy black pistol. He placed it on the counter, sliding it toward her. "Take it," he commanded, his voice low. "If they get past me, don't scream. Don't beg. Just put them down." Susan stared at the weapon, her hands clammy, but slowly. She wrapped her fingers around the cold, unfamiliar metal. The roar of engines and screeching tires outside announced Valenti's arrival. The front door of the diner burst inward with a deafening crack as 3 large figures flooded the entryway. Chaos erupted. Simeon roared, dropping behind the counter as bullets tore through the air, shattering glass and ceramic. One attacker found an opening and charged toward the counter. Without hesitation, Simeon surged upward, using his body as a shield to cover Susan. He took a shot to his already injured side, the raw pain tearing a gasp from his lips, but his own bullet found its mark, dropping the assailant instantly. He fell back, pulling Susan down with him, his sacrifice absolute. Susan was breathing in ragged, shallow gasps behind the ruined counter, the pistol in her hand heavy and useless. Simeon's body was a dark, protective shape next to her, his blood quickly mixing with the old coffee stains on the floor. Then the final figure stepped into the ruined diner. Marco, the blade. Valenti spotted Susan instantly. "The little bird," he sneered. "Simeon, look what your soft heart cost you." In a lightning-fast move, Valenti lunged. He bypassed Simeon, grabbing Susan by the arm and yanking her out from behind the counter, using her body as a living shield. Susan cried out, the shock of being exposed terrifying. She felt the cold steel of a small knife pressed against her throat. Simeon's expression transformed from tactical defense to raw, desperate fury. He rose slowly, ignoring the bullet wound, dropping his weapon onto the ruined floor. "Let her go, Marco," he growled, the sound feral and low. "She means nothing to my empire. Take what you came for. Just leave the waitress." It was a declaration, a desperate lie meant to save her life. Valenti laughed, tightening his grip. "Too late, ghost. She is your Achilles heel." Simeon took one slow step forward. Then, abandoning all pretense of strategy, he feigned collapse. As he dropped, he kicked out with blinding speed at a broken chair leg. The piece of wood spun, hitting Valenti's arm with a jarring thud, forcing him to momentarily loosen his grip on Susan. That fraction of a second was all Simeon needed. With a terrifying surge of energy, he lunged, not for a gun, but directly at Valenti's throat, tackling him away from Susan and into the wreckage. The silence that followed the final, brutal takedown was absolute, shattered only by the sound of Simeon's harsh, ragged breathing. Susan stumbled back from the wreckage where Valenti lay motionless. The diner was a catastrophic ruin of shattered glass, broken wood, and torn metal. But amidst the destruction, her only focus was Simeon, who lay half-propped against the collapsed counter. He lifted a hand, stopping her with a gesture. His eyes, though ringed with exhaustion and pain, were steady and fixed solely on her face. "It's done," he managed, the words a raw, guttural whisper. "Valenti won't trouble us again. Permanently." He hauled her against his chest, heedless of the pain in his side, his good arm wrapping around her with a fierce, possessive strength. His strength was already returning, a dark tide rising from the deep. He tilted her chin up, forcing her to look into his intense, demanding gaze. "The bargain is null and void, Susan. I won't pay you a damn penny to leave." His voice dropped to a low, irreversible command. "I claim you to stay. You are mine. You wanted a new life? I will rebuild this for you, and your life will be protected and without want. But it will be in my world, under my shadow. You don't run from the ghost. You belong here with me." The air in the ruined diner was frigid, the destruction a visceral reminder of the price Simeon had paid to claim her. Days passed in a strange, silent blur. Susan had made her choice, realizing Simeon's absolute, brutal protection offered her a perverse and powerful form of the control she always craved, the control to survive. Now, she stood outside the wreckage, the morning sun casting long shadows on the shattered facade. She looked at the ruined diner and felt no sadness, only the acknowledgement that the fight for her old, honest life was over. A silent, expensive black car pulled up to the curb. Simeon emerged, clean, impeccably dressed, and overwhelmingly powerful. He simply walked toward her, holding out his hand. Susan met his gaze. She had spent her life trying to escape the shadows of the city, only to realize the only true sanctuary was the man who cast the deepest one. She placed her trembling hand in his. The contact was an electric affirmation, sealing their violent, inevitable contract. He leaned in, his voice a low, possessive murmur that promised both danger and infinite security. You want to control, Susan. You have it here with me. No one else touches you. No one else sees you. You are simply mine. Susan didn't look back. She walked with him toward the waiting car, leaving the broken glass and the memory of her solitary struggle behind. She walked into his opulent, protected, and shared shadow, her terrifying new life just beginning. You lock the door to your life, but he just found the key. Susan thought she was safe. She thought she was free. But when the ghost, the most terrifying mafia boss in the city, decides your body is his hiding place, survival is no longer an option. Obsession is the only rule. Do you risk screaming to save your life, or surrender to the man who promises to own your fear? This is not a safe love story. This is a terrifying claim.